My beloved brothers and sisters, being here for the last day and learning so much from the stories of people, I want to focus this khutbah on trying to address, in a very small way, what I think has emerged as two of our deepest questions. Underneath so much of our conversation, I hear these two vital questions, and these are: who am I truly as a human being? And how do I live a life of integrity? And I'm going to focus on parts of the Muslim tradition that give us some crucial guidance as we each grapple with these two enduring questions that will no doubt and inshallah stay with us for the rest of our lives. At least the questions should stay with us for the rest of our lives. The first, and one of my favorite traditions in a hadith al-Qudsi of kuntu kanzan maqfiyan, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I was a hidden treasure, and I yearned or I loved to be known, so I created all of creation in order to be known. Muslim thinkers, and Sufis in particular, have reflected extensively on this amazing hadith, using it as a starting point for understanding human nature and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is Allah's own yearning, longing, and love to be known intimately that is the very reason for our creation. Thus, in our innermost potential and being, we are all mirrors to Allah. Or as in the words of the remarkable South African Sufi poet Shabir Banubai, he says, and I quote, we are all shimmerings of the divine. Our work in this world is to progressively realize this nature and this original divine fitrah to which we are all, every single one of us, heirs. In understanding our fitrah, another Quranic narrative is central, and that's the story of the primordial covenant between Allah and humanity. And we've spoken about this before, known as the Yawm al-Mithaq, or the Day of Al-Ast, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked all souls in a time before time, in an existence before we even entered this very body. When each soul had yet to enter this body, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked, Alastu bi rabbikum? Am I not your Lord and Sustainer? And each soul responded, Bala shahidna. Indeed, we bear witness that there is no God but Allah. This was the very first shahada that each human being has undertaken before even entering into this body and this life. We have all, at the level of our souls, given our fidelity and have pledged our love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jalaluddin Rumi states that this divine Al-Ast and the human answer to Al-Ast is the seal of the heart, and thus the human heart is forever under the spell of Allah's infinite love and power. And in a wonderfully paradoxical image, Rumi says, human hearts are intoxicated from this wine of Al-Ast, and this intoxication allows us to distinguish between good and evil, which is necessary for a responsible life. The 10th century Junayd al-Baghdad states that deep within each of ourselves we yearn to return to that same state of spiritual oneness with our Creator that existed on the day of the Mithaq, when there was no separation between the divine beloved and each of our souls. And Junayd said that this desire for oneness is why Sufis yearn for fana, or that experience of no separate self. Al-Ast has come to symbolize the moment of unity between Allah and humanity. So, my beloved sisters and brothers, this is who we are. We are created to know our Creator, and each of our spiritual journeys is part of divine self-knowledge. That is our true identity. What an extraordinary gift is our life. And so we enter this life and into these bodies in all its incredible diversity of gender and sexuality and race and personality and numerous other variations, all of which are part of the divine one seeking to be known. All of who we are comes from Allah and is part of the journey of reflecting the divine attributes in this world. Moreover, all true yearning for love, for intimacy with others, for connection in this life, is but an echo of that perfect community and love that we have each already known on that original day of promise and fidelity. In the days of our times, perhaps more than any time, or perhaps as much as any other time, we need to remember our true identity, since we live in a context where anger looms large on the world stage and where loving human relationships are less visible. In our madaris or madrasas, we have for too long been taught to focus exclusively on the transcendence of God. That is, God is entirely beyond our conceptions, what Islamic theology calls in its fancy terms tanzih. And while this approach of transcendence is vital and important, it's only one part of the picture. The other part, which is so important, is the divine immanence or tashbih, a view of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's intimate presence with each of us, and most beautifully captured by the Quranic teaching that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is closer to us, to each of us, than our jugular vein. And we have, every one of us, already testified that Allah is our source and our center. And because we have an imbalanced religious and spiritual education that tells us too often about our distance from God, we often experience disproportionately a fear of God. We need to reclaim our traditions that speak to images of Allah, which are reflective of Allah's presence and closeness to us. Traditions that inform us that we are reflections of the hidden treasure that is God, a God whose desire to be known came from love, and whom we love. And where Hadith al-Qudsi tells us, whereas the heavens and the earth cannot contain Allah, but the heart of the faithful believer contains Allah. Having a loving God, we are urged to epitomize the divine quality of love and live up to the highest possibilities of human character. So over these last few days, we've had some conversations on the nature of Islam. What is Islam? Are there many Islams? What does it mean to be a Muslim? What some of these teachings and traditions teach us very clearly is that each of us has an inner source of Islam. In other words, our fitrah is a natural endowment to know and to love God, to have an intrinsic inclination to faith. We have an inbuilt, God-given, primordial radar for the good and the wholesome. And at the deepest level of our humanity, we have the innate capacity to recognize the good. And thus, we're not a morally inert humanity which revelation saves, but rather a humanity that is primed to know goodness. And so revelation serves as a confirmation of a natural order. This is no fallen humanity. So now you have the right to ask me, Sadia, so why is there so little evidence of this exalted human nature when we look around the world? Why are human beings in such a mess globally, locally too? And so while there are all kinds of important and incisive answers to this question at many different levels, I'm going to suggest that the deepest level of the real problem is, as stated in Islamic thought, is a simple one. It's heedlessness and forgetfulness. It is the source of all imbalance. When we become heedless of the divine and of our own divine nature, this light within becomes progressively veiled, more and more veiled, and screened off even to ourselves, dimmer and dimmer. And we are the less whole for that, the less authentic for that, the less of our real selves because of that heedlessness. And it is ultimately heedlessness of the divine that is the deepest source of our suffering. So the mission in this life is to return to that state of original shahada, returning to the awareness and bearing witness to God as the haqq, or the true reality. And that's why in declaring the shahada, we need to draw the full spiritual consequences of the shahada, whereas Islamic law requires that in order for a Muslim to become Muslim or to embrace Islam, One is simply to officially declare the Shahada, God's oneness. On the other hand, living Islam demands that this witness is not merely lip service, nor intellectual endeavor, nor merely an affective sentiment or reflection, but rather a full, living, embodied, experiential witnessing that results in the inner knowledge of Allah's oneness. So this is all quite nice and fancy and esoteric. What does this mean in practical terms? So I'm going to give you a little bit of reflection on this. The first pillar of Islam, the Shahada, begins with a negation, as we all know, La ilaha, and then it proceeds to an affirmation, Illallah. And this initial negation, La ilaha, demands that we reject all forms of deities. It is only after this negation that has happened that the affirmation can follow. Spiritual practice entails this journey of purification of the self from the lower instincts, from the self-absorbed passion and ego that drives us as human beings. For every believer, we aspire to constantly realize the Shahada at the numerous levels of our consciousness. Only for the most accomplished or evolved souls it is a fait accompli, if that, I'm not sure. But for the rest of us, it's an ongoing journey and a continuous struggle to realize this very simple but very encompassing first pillar of Islam. And it is because of the dynamism of this process that some of the Muslim mystics say that we cannot ever say we are Muslim, but rather that we are always on the path to becoming Muslim. This illusionary dimension of the world is also expressed by the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ states that in this world it's as though people are sleeping, and when they die it's as if they wake up. So how do we do this? How do we ensure that we're not the actors on the stage of the illusionary world, but that in all our actions, individual and social, we are worshippers on the prayer mat of the world? How does one embody such a relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How does one negotiate one's responsibilities between the path of internal self-purification and of communal commitments, or the mu'amalat? Can we recognize aspects in ourselves or in others who are involved in socially important, progressive work which is meant to change the world into a more humane place, very important work? When the inner whisperer says, quietly but whispers, I'm so good, I'm such a great teacher, I'm such a committed social activist, I'm such a great academic, I do such important work. The nafs always appeals to the very spiritual ideas we hold, utilizing its very intimate knowledge of the ways in which each of our individual identities are built. It is fully aware of our vulnerabilities and pain, and so cunningly presents diminishing choices to us in ways that are disguised and camouflaged to appear to be serving a very noble purpose. And through such manipulations, one might well be persuaded by one's own nafs to pursue that which is not actually ethically acceptable, or something that might be damaging for our souls. The Sufi notion of muhasabah is truly important, and that means to carefully subject your own, even seemingly good motivations to rigorous interrogation. To really ask ourselves, what am I really wanting here? Is this truly in line with my higher self? And to constantly use the check and balances of the Sharia, and I'm using the term Sharia in its original meaning of a clear moral law, not the technical fiqh or pre-modern men's ideas of what is Sharia. To be vigilant to the axiom that the ends do not justify the means, that we are constantly in the presence of a God that demands our deepest inner work and our highest ethical behavior in every single thing we do. And the other way, so that's one way we can, I think the smaller decisions, the smaller things that are in the grey area, we need to be very careful of those. And the other way, I think, that many of us start becoming players on the stage of illusion is ironically in situations where in our religious journey we become excessively judgmental of ourselves. The sense of becoming absorbed by self-blaming and feeling unworthy also has the potential of becoming an inadvertent trap of the very same nafs al-ammara or lower self. If it can't get you through arrogance, it will get you to the whole drama of shame and unworthiness. So let's not surrender to either of these dramas, for they take us away from haqq, from truth. I'm not saying that we should ignore ugliness. It's vital to take a clear, solid look at ugliness or bad qualities like pride or anger or shame when they appear, and to work on transforming them and changing our thoughts and our behavior accordingly. But with excessive self-blame, there's a possibility to climb back onto the stage of the world and become an actor on the drama. Indeed, we do need to be able to recognize our problems, look deeply into their spiritual implications, work consistently on correcting them, transforming the inequality that manifests in such behavior, and then keep moving in our journey to Allah. In a constant embodiment and a conscious awareness of living the Shahada through each experience. Let us remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and her infinite abundance resides in the details. Spirituality is embodied in our lives and our relationships with each other. It's how we engage in the everyday, the raising of our children, how we treat our fellow human beings, particularly those less powerful than ourselves. How do we deal with pain in situations where we've been wrong? How do we learn to speak or listen to one another? How do we clothe beauty with modesty? Are we being constantly vigilant with our own intentions and actions? Do we actively interrogate ourselves around self-inflated concepts of pride and hypocrisy and false piety? Do we make a genuine effort to do service to other lives? Spiritual refinement and beauty of character is in the detail. Allah is in the detail. Love is in the detail. And I'd like to end with the following hadith. In the days of our time, your Lord has fragrant blasts of mercy. Fragrant blasts of mercy. Address yourself to them so that you may be struck by one of them, never afterwards to be wretched. May we each address ourselves to the fragrant blasts of mercy. May we be struck by these, never to be wretched again, inshallah.